Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Wednesday, September 22nd. Let's hop in. Starting a little late today, I got a little distracted in programming. The good news is, though, I did finish one batch file. It was a nightmare of just escaping, double escaping, triple escaping commands, but I finally got it to work. And now I'm just working on what relatively should be a fairly short, less than 10 line batch file that I just have to once again mess with the ridiculousness of double escaping and triple escaping. Honestly, if it were a longer batch file, since this is like the third one I've done and probably the last, if it was going to be longer, I'd probably still commit to the idea of, I guess, Dragoncraft or Bloodcraft today, learning PowerShell and just taking that extra time to learn PowerShell and stay away from batch files, which are terrible Windows options. Let's go ahead and just open all three of these. I also sort of kind of made some progress on working on the irrigation system I'm trying to build, in the sense that I once again took it off the wall and the faucet and the spigot it's attached to, which, I mean, that is the next step that had to happen, but it's not real progress until the whole project is finished, and I definitely want to be finished with the project fairly quickly. See if we've got anything else here that we have packs for. Yeah, we do. I also took some time to think about what I was saying as far as maybe there would be a way to automate making thumbnails. Like, by default, Google, YouTube could do that easily. You could have an overlay file and have it pull the name of the video and like an episode number from the video and autocraft them. Google, YouTube has just not bothered to program that. But using the command line function program ImageMagick, I think you could do that too. I would still need basically either an extra week at least to try and struggle to make an overlay file, an overlay template, just because I'm not an artist, and that would be fairly rough. But that would be doable. The big difference would be if I was to make that and get that to work. Right now, it would be a case of having to type in the name of the series and type in the number of the series every time, and have all the videos separated into either different folders or different names.
Ready for action.
Now, I did go to the OBS ideas page, which honestly is probably very much just a page where ideas go to die. Frankly, suggestions and even submissions of code for most programs, in my experience, don't ever get acted on. People are busy. I think OBS in particular is kind of a under-supported software for as much as it's used. And that's where you see things like Streamlabs OBS pop up and have more integration and more features, but then less options and less advanced modifications. But yeah, if there was a way to suggest the specific scenes or specific sources, whether you're doing a Windows capture, display capture, or game capture, to have them grab the window title. So in this case, we're looking at Shadowverse as the active window. If it could grab that and do in its file renaming Shadowverse, and then maybe even an episode number and a text file next to that, and then increment it every time you hit the record button, that would be very useful, because once you have the file names labeled by OBS automatically, then it's very easy to make a script that reads the file names with image magic and takes that as information to act upon and automate the process. And the whole thing here is about how much can you automate, how much can you optimize. There is definitely a point there. You could almost make a screenshot. Sorry, I'm chewing on ice.
There's a battle underway.
You can almost make a screenshot in OBS by default, just by like the first frame of a video being generated through a Lua script or Python script, the ones that they support. Just making a plugin that would make it look exactly what you want. The only thing there is you can't use video footage from that video to make the screenshot unless you made the screenshot at the very end of the recording, which that'd be a possibility too. There's also a button to just make a screenshot, I think, in OBS, but yeah, it would be very weird to be in the middle of the stream and say, hey, now's the time I'm gonna make a screenshot, so let me just press this button. That doesn't make the most sense. To interrupt the flow of what you're doing. So yeah, you could definitely do that. The bigger problem certainly is theoretically YouTube's picking of the thumbnails is going through a actual artificial intelligence algorithm to try and find interesting images. I don't know how much really how much work is really going into that, but it does seem like it does know how to pick out faces and do artificial visual recognition, whereas I don't think there's an easy command line function that could do that. So best case scenario, anything I scripted that didn't take the thumbnails by default that YouTube suggests after you've uploaded the video and it's been processed, anything I did before that point would be weird, to say the least. It would be mostly just either a random frame or a frame directly in the middle of the videos. And yeah, particularly I would have to think about some more ways in which I would want the overlay image to be. Ideally, I think most thumbnails on YouTube, you have kind of text in the lower left hand corner, maybe an episode number in a little triangle bookmark tab, maybe you put a logo in the top left, and then generally I don't think you do anything in the lower right because that's where the time is. There has also been instances that look kind of nice where you just have a full banner that fades out into a gradient on the bottom. And I've also seen the idea of putting a small border around the images to just make it feel a little differentiated. But as for what is inside the thumbnail, particularly for a video game critic, it would just be video game footage. So you could show off this, You could try to have like a cropped out image and try and do more of a collage and put another bigger zoomed in image here or here. I've seen that done, but that's not really something you can automate. So there's that is much more in the range of having a full-time artist. And honestly, at the end of the day, I think it's worth saying, as a small, probably failed YouTube content creator, video game critic, I don't know if the algorithm hasn't just completely blacklisted my channel already. Like, there are definitely some YouTubers who straight up have said I should just start a new channel and see how that works, because they feel like their channel has been blacklisted. I don't know if there's any real truth to that or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's very little I could do on my channel the way I make content to make it work. Yeah. I also played a little bit of Binding of Isaac as far as to wrapping up this accountability section. I may have only played like one episode and gotten fairly tired at the end of that one episode, but once again I succeeded at beating Mom's heart on hard. I think I succeeded all the way to the end of the lamb path and beat the lamb on hard. So yeah, I have about 4 more episodes. About 4 more episodes that I need to record with Binding of Isaac Rebirth, and I need to do some scheduling. Once again, quit distracting myself with side projects, and then like move on to the next game. One of the problems certainly with working on the irrigation system is, since it is effectively a plumbing project, even just using pliers a little bit for less than a couple hours yesterday, I can feel it in my fingers, and I just don't have the calluses, I guess would be the best thing to say there. I just don't have the muscle and the calluses for doing that kind of physical work. Yeah, and that's about it as far as things I've been doing. We have Syed Al-Malki on the chat, which maybe he doesn't recognize that it's delayed, saying hi, how are you today, and then focus on me, all basically according to the timestamps in less than 1 minute. Which, okay, I'll respond to the chat if I see so and feel the need to, but the phrase focus on me is not going to get you very far with me. I also have been watching the season 3 of Sex Education on Netflix, which I liked 1 and 2. I'm probably not going to watch any more past the 3rd or 4th season. They have done something in season 3 that is applaudable, but also kind of very specifically for me a no-go. They've created a wolves in sheep's clothing principal in this fictional story who is specifically pretending like she's a good principal, but in all actuality she's a tyrannical dictator, and she's slowly and very obviously, that they're not being subtle about it at all, destroying the school that is the main environment. She paints, like, painting over all of the walls and making them this beige gray, implementing uniforms, just enforcing the most conservative, and I think it's supposed to be a UK school anyway, so she is turning what was actually probably a far too liberal school, as it was depicted in the first couple seasons, into what is a fairly conservative school, even by UK standards, which are fairly conservative anyways. And there's definitely something about that in the way I felt like a lot of the teachers in my school and principals in my schools that I went to acted and were dictators and tyrannical conservative idiots. Little sociopaths might not be the right term, but yeah, little Napoleon complexed people. And so after about the third season of seeing how this is going, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like am deeply actually in the real world emotionally getting upset watching this. And I hate this character that is clearly being written to be hateable, and that's applaudable and all, but I'm hating this character so much that it is actually upsetting me in the real world, and that really should not be the case. But yeah, it's like triggering some PTSD in me from school is how I've phrased it. Yeah. And that's kind of not the first time that this has happened in the past couple of months. I've also felt that same way on the cell phone game I played, Destiny Child. There's a bad guy named Loki who effectively killed, in the narrative, he is nearly killed or killed all of the main characters and nearly killed the absolute protagonist. Really causing him to have amnesia, erasing all of the connections with all of his, well, they're called childs, all of his minions, for lack of a better term, which he didn't treat them like minions. They are very much characters that he cared about. And if anything, that is one thing about this narrative going this way, is that it is established this new character who was the main protagonist, who looked completely different and went by the name Master, for lack of a better translation. And the Master character has been replaced by this Mitra character that looks completely different and actively says he wants his children back, his child's back, versus Master, who never really cared about having the childs around, or never seemed like he cared. And so it's weird to have a change in the main protagonist appearance, but the main protagonist appearance in the first before was kind of a joke appearance, and now it seems like the story is trying to make him more serious and actually care. So there is an odd shift there. But yeah, when you start to see them talk about how Loki nearly killed the main protagonist, the character that you're playing as, and when you've put as much effort and time as I've put into playing Destiny Child, there is this outside of the game deep emotional kind of hatred that they've built into me, which honestly maybe it just means that I'm getting old and emotional, or perhaps just emotionally unstable in general, because usually in fiction I've been able to mostly keep a separation completely be completely disassociated with characters. Most of the time that still is very much the case. I know I've definitely heard lots of people say they were scared of like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, things like that, and that never affected me at all, because it's like, yeah, obviously this is fiction. You're just listening to a story. So yeah. But I guess also I've just never really had a deep connection to fictional stories. And even in video games, like, I've never really had a deep connection with the characters in the stories. Didn't sympathize with them. Maybe I'm finally, in my old age, overly sympathizing or learning to sympathize with them. But it is very stupid to sympathize with fictional characters.
My children are my pride
We
and joy.
won't give him an inch.
Ready the pop cannon!
Watch as I wind and
I don't know if there was really a point in that conversation, but I figured I'd point it out. Moving on. We don't have a lot of news, so we can probably burn through this fairly quickly. Maybe get under 3 hours. Fortnite won't be back in the App Store until the Epic vs. Apple appeals process ends, according to GameDeveloper.com. There'll be no jugging on iOS or macOS until Epic and Apple are finished making their appeals. That's a weird subtitle because I don't know what jugging is. Also, I don't think Fortnite is ever coming back to the App Store. Not one bit. I think there's potentially a case where even if a judge did order some restitution to the Epic company for being kicked off the App Store, that restitution is only going to go as far as a few months longer than the term of a contract. Like, there is, unless Apple is an idiot and they haven't written any kind of exit clauses into their contracts, there certainly is a case where they could have, Apple could have given notification and said, in this next 6 weeks, 2 weeks, 6 months would be too long, really. We're going to dissolve our partnership and no longer list your shop on the store. And the difference between whatever that date is, whether it was 6 weeks or 2 weeks, and the instantaneous removal of Fortnite is the best restitution I think Epic is ever going to get. Even if there was a huge monopoly judgment against Apple that caused Apple to get fined a lot, and promise not to do it again, I still think in that case you're going to run into a situation where they would just pay the fine and then you would still not see the game return to the Epic's. Yeah, I don't think you would see it return to the Apple Store. Because it's just a little bit outside of the Constitution in most cases to force someone to do something. It's a lot more common to find somebody and make them pay, but to force somebody to do something is actually asking a lot. It's not crazy to force somebody to not do something. It's very easy for the courts to say, stop doing this thing, don't do this thing. It's weirder to say, do this thing. And honestly, it would establish such a precedent that I wouldn't be surprised if Apple literally just shut down this app store completely. I know that sounds like a crazy thought, but it would be doable. Apple could release its iPhones and say it is just going to have the software that it comes with in the operating system, and there is no app store at all. And this is just a closed ecosystem. That's not really much different from what flip phones even now, which are still available for sale, offer.
Step closer to victory. Harder armor. Steel yourself. Loyalty is ironclad. Me whiskers.
I'd also say it's kind of pointless at this point to even talk about the Epic Store lawsuit, since it's still going to go on for a long time. Alright, let's just make sure this is YouTube family friendly. Here we have a game on Steam called Cyber Dunk Anime Edition, which is just the anime waifu 3D models being reused in a cyberpunk-like environment. It looks fairly dim and dark in the screenshots. And obviously there's really no game here. 84 cents, English only, third-party EULA. It's being compared to Binary Domain. That's a bad comparison. They really need to address the elephant in the room with these awful asset flip anime waifu games.
Steel yourself.
Is there a way to evolve?
Steel
Nope.
yourself. Steel yourself.
Yeah. It's ridiculous that those kinds of games are coming out and still getting prominence or getting released. I think it would be better for the video game industry and the adult video game industry in particular if maybe only one game a week was an adult game, but it was a really good adult game.
General, we destroyed them.
Yeah, a jigsaw puzzle model, not video game jigsaw puzzle, but real world, made out of cardboard jigsaw puzzle model might be very useful, where if you're going to a gift shop or toy store, how many shelves are full of jigsaw puzzles? Unless it's a specialty jigsaw puzzle store, I would tell you there's probably like less than 30 jigsaw puzzles of different pictures for sale. And unless it's a custom picture, say, that has something very specific to it, like a jigsaw puzzle based on the local sports teams, there's probably only going to be 2 copies at most of the jigsaw puzzles. In most cases, I think maybe only 1. So, yeah, when you look at a toy store, there's very, very few jigsaw puzzles because people know they're not going to sell that much, and there's a lot more variety. And in fairness, there is also a decent amount of quality for a cardboard jigsaw puzzle, in the sense that they haven't flooded the market with terrible jigsaw puzzles that can't be solved or missing pieces, because if that were the case, that would be people in general would stop doing jigsaw puzzles at all. Plus, there's such a small audience of people who do want to do real-world jigsaw puzzles. You have to keep them happy. the adult video game industry should probably be more in that category. Very far away from like the Nuntaku strategy, which is to come out with a new game every month, but then every new game be complete garbage and full of microtransactions. That comes from almost the idea of how porn was done in the early days of the early days of porn on the internet, where you really could charge people access and all of that. Nowadays, like, Pornhub is free, LobsterTube is free, things like that. So to get somebody to pay for porn online nowadays is you have to hit a very specific niche, or you have to sell on lies of more interaction, as they do on the streaming services. What is that one? Well, I want to call it Twitch, but that's not what I mean. OnlyFans, that's what I'm trying to talk about. Yeah. OnlyFans only works in the sense that it is targeting and promising more interaction than what you would get just watching a random video. Back to video game news though. The FCC points to the Nintendo Switch controller announcement this week. We had kind of already talked about this, but Nintendo has just announced a approximate 40-minute Nintendo Direct for tomorrow, which does imply to me that there's a decent chance they'll come out with a Nintendo 64 Switch controller alongside the announcement of some Nintendo 64 games. They had released the 3 Mario games out and then stopped selling that, so I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of brought back the Mario games, or use that as an experiment to introduce more Nintendo 64 ports. Although, in all fairness, if you're going to start bringing over and porting Nintendo 64 games, and assuming most of those are all going to be Nintendo, once you get past Mario 64, you're going to have fairly diminishing returns very quickly, unless they can pull off a GoldenEye re-release, which that's probably stuck in licensing hell. You could certainly bring out Star Fox 64, but there aren't any other Star Fox games around that. I don't think there was a Metroid game at all for the Nintendo 64 era. You could certainly...
If you value your life, come no further.
We're ready to sail?
Let's see.
March on!
Into pouncing
We
position,
won't give him an inch!
Yeah, I really don't know what you could target or shoot for as far as
natural for leaves to fall.
Nintendo 64 games. Ocarina of Time, sure, but I think that game has already been re-released. I'd pretty much have to look at a list. Let's go top Nintendo 64 games. Just Google search that. Let's go with this first link. They're starting at 50 and working their way up, so let me just skip a lot of these, like Blast Corps, you're not really gonna see. I mean, we could just scroll through this. Turok 2, Star Wars. Yeah, maybe you could bring back the pod racing Star Wars game, and maybe that would make sense. You're not gonna bring back old wrestling games. Goemon's Great Adventure is not going to sell in the West. They haven't done anything with Donkey Kong, so yeah, you can bring back Donkey Kong 64. A lot of these are more Japanese focused games. Pilot Wings 64. I mean, all these games are going to be incredibly rough looking visually also. So, like, really Nintendo 64 games should be remastered. Bringing back Pokemon Snap, the original game, makes very little sense. Mischief Makers was kind of interesting. There was a remaster of Doom 64. You can bring back Mario Party 64. Maybe you can bring back Pokemon Stadium, Mario Golf, Mario Tennis. Anything Mario kind of makes sense. I don't think Sin and Punishment even was released in the West. Wave Race 64 would then once again be very rough graphics for what it is. Mario Party 3. I guess you could do Mario Party 1, 2, and 3, which I guess were all Nintendo 64 games. Banjo 2D, you're probably not bringing that. Mario Party 2. Diddy Kong Racing. Again, a lot of these were made by Rare as the developer, so maybe you have to do something there. Resident Evil 2 for Nintendo 64 is probably not the version you want to play. Couple Star Wars. You're not going to bring back Conker's Bad Fur Day. You can bring back the original Smash Brothers, and that very well may be the case, is that they just straight up announce the original Smash Brothers on Switch, so then they can stop Evo people from emulating the game.
Loyalty is ironclad. Loyalty is ironclad.
Yeah, that may be the only reason that the controller is coming out at all. Is just Smash Brothers.
Well, aren't you something?
And then you're probably not doing an F-Zero game. You can bring back Mario 64, Mario Kart. You can bring back Paper Mario. Still, most of these need to be emulated. Perfect Dark. Again, this is a Rare game. Like, the only way this really works is if Microsoft, who now owns Rare, has just allowed and negotiated the release of a lot of old Nintendo 64 Rare games on the Switch, and instead of potentially remastering them. Like, Star Fox 64 is a great game, certainly, but they haven't done anything with Star Fox in a long time. Here, they put Mario 64 as number 5 in this list, then Banjo-Kazooie. I don't think I ever really played that. And then GoldenEye. Again, developed by Rare. And then Majora's Mask. I think that's been re-released, but also not one of the most favorite ones. And then Ocarina of Time. Which again, I feel like Ocarina of Time has been re-released. Let's see if I can search just Ocarina of Time and see what versions have been released. See. Let's hop into a game while we're doing this. Releases. Nintendo ported Ocarina of Time to its next console, the GameCube, as part of the Legend of Zelda Collector's Edition, a compilation of Zelda games. The port runs at 640 by 480, quadruple the original. Wow. really shows and supports progressive scan, so that'd be kind of crazy. Then it was also released on the Wii Virtual Console,
To arms. There's a battle
which is just an emulation of the Nintendo 64 version. Let's see. Apparently there was going to be a Rumble Pack feature that didn't get added. And then there was a Nintendo 3DS remaster. Then the master version rearranges it. It's kind of like a new game plus idea. But yeah, I think it would make a lot more sense to port the 3DS version than to just emulate the original version and sell a controller. And what I would also say is weird is that they are skipping over the idea of selling a Super NES controller, because they had the limited runs of like NES controllers, and then now it seems like they're going to announce a Nintendo 64 controller, but you've skipped over Super NES in that case. And it definitely does introduce a question about, would there be a GameCube controller accessory that they would sell? That would be fine. It would get a little bit weirder if they introduced a Wii nunchuck controller. Although I think a lot of people would be very happy with the idea of, we've released a new Joy-Con that is in the form factor of the Wii nunchuck. I don't know if all the buttons would work that way, but I think I probably would be happier holding a thicker, bigger Wii nunchuck than I would be holding the smaller, made for little kids Joy-Cons. See, can this evolve? Can't evolve in one turn, so let's just do this.
No one gets past me.
No one gets past me.
Moving on with video game news, Death Stranding PS4 owners can upgrade to the PS5 Director's Cut for £5, which has been confirmed to be $10 in the United States. Really? It was £10 before. Wow. So the pound now is being equated to worth $2. Which, yeah, that's lower than what it was worth, I think, before.
Dance, dear bones of white.
Well, actually, I think that's the exact opposite direction of what it was used to be. It used to be, in pounds, things were more expensive. Yeah, I know the pound's valuation has drastically changed. Also, I think there's a very large difference between video game pricing and the rest of the world pricing as far as US dollars and pounds. Let's see. Okay.
No one gets past me.
Hit this one.
The bones embrace me. No one
And
gets
then
past
hit
me.
this one.
My armor has been pierced.
And then this one. See, this one makes a destruction in black. If I can get both of these on the field, that would be great. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles Video Games Chronicle has an article here. Developers are getting their Steam Decks and giving their initial verdicts. Valve has only been sending out dev units to studios, so Valve has been sending out dev units to studios so they can test their existing games. There is definitely something nicer about just looking at this in human hands, assuming this isn't just a mock-up and the scale is totally wrong, which it might be. The screen feels a lot bigger than a Nintendo Switch, and these controllers feel a lot bigger, and that is desirable, I think, for adult hands. Whereas when you look at it solo like this and on a slanted angle, I was thinking that this Steam Deck was going to look mostly or be about the same size as a Nintendo Switch. I'm not sure if I'd get a Steam Deck or a Switch at this point, or at any point in the future, but it definitely would be a question as far as whether that is which one I'd want to get first. I think I probably would want to get a... Why is this not going down? That doesn't make any sense.
We won't give him an inch.
Whenever an allied follower is destroyed, subtract 1 cost from this card. So I just destroyed 4 allied followers. Why did that not trigger?
Won't be long now.
On my honor as a knight. I have to get strong. Stronger than I am now.
Yeah, it would be kind of hard, I think, for me personally to justify getting a Steam Deck because I have a computer in front of me always anyways, and I'm just never commuting anywhere. Let's see. This almost feels like this activates only once per turn. Alright. 3 Shield Guardians.
We'll do this together.
We won't give him an inch.
Make a copy of that.
On a musical journey.
Do we want to evolve anything? Guess not. Moving on, Gamatsu has an article. A company called Grounding has issued new shares to NetEase Games through third-party allotment. The World's End Club and Space Channel 5 VR Kinda Funky Newsflash developer has secured new funding. Secured new funding by literally selling shares of its company, thus pieces of itself. Which that leaves NetEase, which I think is a Chinese company, maybe I'm wrong about that, a step closer to having controlling share of the company. Gamatsu has Famitsu's review scores for issue 1712. Legend of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai for the PS4 is given 34 out of 40, which is a good score. Whereas World Rally Championship 9 for the PS5 and Switch was given 32 out of 40, which is about average. Okay. This one can be played. And then... do we do this? And this? I think you do this.
Fighting means he likes.
Then do this.
And the lies. The truth will cut you down. Everything was a lie.
step closer
Evolve
to
here, I
victory.
guess.
Don't make me crack my whip. Bad beast, bad.
I've still got far to go.
Let's see. Gamatsu says Muv-Love Project Mikhail for Switch has been delayed. The PC launch has been changed to early access. Still due out in October. Muv-Love was, I think, a mech game. Mech fighting game. Although the name makes it feel more like a visual novel. I doubt too many people are going to be really affected or concerned by that. Let's see, we've got some games on Steam. I Love Finding Cats, which clearly is just a cat-focused hidden object game.
What should we play
Which-
today, Roly-Poly?
Yeah, too cat-focused for me. $5.59 English only. Doesn't look like a game that is any better or worse than most hidden object games. Here we have a game called Kingdom of Heroes, which looks like a MOBA attempt. $5.59 single player. I guess it's just a low effort, top down action RPG. Let's see. Let's see if this works well for us. I'm just gonna end the turn here. Let's see if this destruction in white and destruction in black can really save the day, or if we're doomed. Here we have a game on Steam called GPI, which looks like nothing of interest. 99 cents English only. Here we have a game called Loop Timer, which looks like total garbage. Looks like it's not really even a game. 99 cents English and Chinese. Here we have a game called Almazy, which doesn't look like anything I'd care about. 19.99. Bunch of languages, way too expensive. Here we have a game just in Asian characters. Looks like just an RPG game. Chinese RPG.
It all ends here.
Yep. Chinese only. Selling it for $199.99. Let's just be careful here. And yeah, ridiculously overpriced. At that point, either somebody's made a pricing mistake or they are straight up trying to money launder. Okay, let's see what happens when our turn starts.
Move out. We haven't lost yet. Them.
I heal 2 points. I deal 10 damage to everybody except for this guy. Alright, now... Do I want to kill some people, or do I want to put this on the field first? I think we'll put this on the field first.
But you're not alone. Out of my way. I did my bestest.
Shutting down.
Yeah, I think we've got a victory here. But it will take a couple of attempts, a couple turns, unless they just concede.
May we walk hand in hand till death do us part. I will
Let's
strike
speed
you
things
down.
up. Should have been quicker.
The world when you've got me. Isn't love amazing? Such a lovely couple.
There we go. +2 in rush until the end of the turn. I guess we'll play this. It can't evolve anymore. Next we have a game on Steam here called Nuremberg Verdict, or Verdict of the Nations. I don't think that the Nuremberg trials really would be a good source of interactive gameplay. More, it feels like this would just be an attempt at re-depicting the Nuremberg trials, which I'm not sure you really need to go through the whole trials. At a certain point, you know the Nuremberg trials are going to come out with a guilty verdict no matter what. There was just too much anger after an entire world war to expect anything else. So I don't think I would go as far as to suggest or even think that any of the people who were charged were unfairly charged or unfairly convicted or anything like that. But in a lot of ways, it was just an attempt to bring back the world to the idea of law and order versus past, instead of being a world of just violence and fighting that the world had been living through. So now we'll try Dragoncraft and Bloodcraft victories. But yeah, as far as like legal drama or anything like that, I don't think there's a real reason why I'd want to cover a game like that. Also, apparently English is not supported. It's free to play. What language is it then? Russian. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's possibly some misinformation in a game like this coming from Russia. But honestly, in fairness, it could have been misinformation coming from any country or people or region. Generally, if you're going to cover a controversial topic, there is at least a small level of propaganda you're trying to put into that topic, particularly a dead topic such as the Nuremberg trials. Moving on, we have Engine Evolution 2021, which, yeah, this looks like a simulation and not really a racing game. Well, actually it is a racing game, according to its description. Free-to-play MMO with in-app purchases and a third-party account, English and Czech. I don't think there's enough visual polish to want to play this kind of game. Honestly, though, I don't know if I'd want to play that kind of game anyways. Let's play this. Next here we have a game called Toru Taru, which looks like another pixely horror, Asian horror game. I just don't think there's enough visual polish for a horror game there. $4.99, English only. Odd that it's English only. Yeah, if you're gonna make a horror game, you can't also make a retro game. Not in my mind. I just don't think that's going to work. There's been a couple of games that maybe have pulled off that trick, but the vast majority of horror games do need to be as hyper-realistic as possible to accomplish a goal of being scary. Here we have a game called City Legends: The Curse of the Crimson Shadow, the Collector's Edition, which is obviously just another hidden object game. Not from Big Fish Games, though, so it's Domni Games. Unless Big Fish Games has changed their name, this is one of those rare occasions where we see something labeled a Collector's Edition, not from them. Still Big Fish Games style price, though. $13.99, English only. Yeah, and they only have a couple of games listed. Yeah, I think if Big Fish Games did change their name, more people would be aware of that, or I would have heard about it. That being said, there is sometimes some news that just is not getting covered. I'm missing it, or it's just not being reported on.
Weird feeling.
That was a little premature to do that, but whatever. Here we have World War Z Aftermath, which is mixed reviewed, which kind of sucks, because I feel like the World War Z concept probably could be good, but the problem I think is because you're getting the license of World War Z and you're not getting it for free, obviously, there's money that should have gone to the development of the game that instead went to that license. And so you get these not as good as average zombie games, which that has been consistently, I think, the issue. I've yet to find a World War Z game worth playing. Well, this says it's single player, it has a third party EULA, and I think it's mostly online focused. Yeah, and if anything, maybe World War Z games are setting a potential future for the Dying Light game, or Dying Light 2 when it comes out, in that there very well maybe just not that much interest these days in zombie games. Gametsu says Orca is co-developing a Dragon Quest XII: The Flames of Fate. They previously made Echoes of Elusive Age, and they're recruiting staff. So, another Dragon Quest XII sequel spinoff. It's developed with the Unreal Engine 5, but they don't know what platform it's going to be on, which I think you could probably guess that it is going to be on the major platforms and not a mobile game, but I guess there is a possibility it's a mobile game. A game called Dying 1983 for the PS5 launches February 17th, 2022 in Japan. It's playable at the Tokyo Game Show 2021 online. Do we have a bit of a trailer here? Is the Tokyo Game Show happening right now? Maybe. That would explain the Nintendo Direct also. You have this weird fish head in a Chinese dress character, which makes me think that this is probably not much of a game. And just a full red cover image is pretty awful. Like, there's... people can do better. See if this works.
This is pure craftsmanship.
My raging flames have got your back.
There's a lot more where that came from.
Where's the heat of you? That twig won't do a thing.
See if we can win there. Probably not. A game called Rainbow Billy: The Curse of Leviathan launches October 5th. Very flat, like, it kind of feels like it's inspired by the 70s art style. These clothes look really weird, certainly, but it's more of a flatter,
On to the next project.
almost Cartoon Network animation style as far as that image.
Fiery one.
But the actual game seems to be more of a 3D game. You get on these islands and then you establish rainbows by collecting things on the islands, and then maybe that lets you transfer somewhere else. Rainbow Billy might be a reference to like Steamboat Willie, and that this is just a parody of Mickey Mouse, early Mickey Mouse style games. There might be something here. I guess one of the questions certainly to ask about a game like this, though, is what age range is it really targeting? Because this could be a nostalgia idea. Where it could also be more of a strike. See if we can do this.
Ready to witness my true strength?
Fists of eternal rage, sunder all before you, sundering fist.
Stop!
Yeah, I'm 1 damage short. And so I'm gonna lose here.
This victory is a testament to your strength.
Yep, looking at this on Steam, it's rated E for everyone, so it does seem like it is going for more of a kid-friendly experience. Because I could see this being fairly subversive as a game and just looking really cutesy, and then actually being incredibly difficult to play. There may not be too much to this game too. It could be closer to 5-hour experience than a 15-hour experience. And it seems like when you actually do get into fights, you're doing more of a RPG turn-based fighting. Moving on, Gran Turismo 7 25th anniversary pre-order bonuses have been announced. This is on Gamatsu if you want to check it out. I kinda don't care. Playtonic Friends is going to publish Little Gator game for Switch and PC, which is apparently a new Gator game. There was a different alligator game earlier, a year ago or so. This one's more 3D. Again, looks kind of kid-friendly. Are we hitting a point now where the Tokyo Game Show is going to be the point where we start to see more kid-friendly 3D platforming games? Is that a side effect potentially that we're going to start seeing of the idea of these direct announcements, Microsoft and Sony just not really being concerned about the younger group, and then even Nintendo really only focusing on advertising their own products? Generally speaking, I would expect that the Japanese announcements in Tokyo Game Show would be more around shoot 'em ups, visual novels, adult games, very Japanese-centric games.
Not with everyone around me.
It might be the fact that maybe this year Japan is going to try and focus on kid-friendly games more than previous years. I don't know what would have really pushed them in that direction, other than perhaps the idea that they're not getting enough sales of the adult, more mature games. Moving on, Gamatsu says Cotton Guardian Force Saturn Tribute Cotton 100% and Panorama Cotton are coming to the West in 2021, which all of these Cotton games are side-scrolling shooters, I think. Yep. So, probably fairly easy to translate games like that anyways. And being older, side-scrolling, kind of arcade-focused games, there's magic bars and health bars I'm noticing, and that does kind of make it feel like there's more going on than your standard shoot 'em up. Well, I think sometimes standard shoot 'em ups have very little going for them.
This is pure craftsmanship.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Pizza Apocalypse, which looks like it's a card-based, turn-based game. Definitely kind of a weird art style, but maybe a little too simplistic. Seems like you have some character cards and then some modifier cards, and you try to make connections of some sorts. Might be a little bit too simplistic. Let's see if this makes any sense. Yeah, seems like these are probably enemies that get on a front line and they start attacking you. And then you have to, I guess, defend it in some way. This could be the kind of game where they're kind of in love with their art style, which would be fine for a cartoon or a comic book, but I'm not sure really makes sense in video game form. This is English only. And maybe it is just trying to advertise this artist, Louis Morel, more than anything else. And at a certain point, I think I will get irritated by the idea of artists making very basic, if not just straight up low effort versions of games to promote their artistry or promote something else. Like, I would already be at that point if, say, Kanye West released a low effort video game to promote his newest song album, and we see that in the form of like some of the K-pop and J-pop artists where they make very low effort games and just are promoting their K-pop songs. But yeah, I don't want to see Steam become the place where you go to look at ads. I mean, you're already looking at ads to buy video games, but the product itself should not be an ad. But I will leave Pizza Apocalypse on the follow list just to see if people like it. I bet very few people ever even give it the time of day.
Best of luck to you.
I didn't play that quite as well as I should have. Here we have a game on Steam called Million on Mars, which looks to be just kind of a strategy game. They're calling it a city building MMO experience. Early access, labeled as an MMO, English only. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to play an MMO and city builder together. That's two very different types of games that I don't think would mix well. Having other people potentially grief your city building strategy sounds crazy. Here we have a game called Sword of Hypotenuse, which is a math word. Yeah. Seems to be some math jokes in this game. The actual game, though, looks kind of like nothing. Even if there was an idea where you have to make a right-angle triangle every time you attack and use the hypotenuse and the Pythagorean theorem to get a squared equals b squared equals c squared, none of that sounds fun. It's not fun in geometry. It's not fun in the real world. Actually, in fairness, I did find geometry very fun. So, but yeah, that is much, much closer to doing real world work and doing geometric calculations than it is doing something that's interesting. I'll hit this and hope this works. And then
There's a lot more where that came from.
get rid of that.
The time to awaken is here.
And then hit that. Next, we have a game on Steam called Guild of Ascension, which looks like it's kind of a, well, it says turn-based tactical RPG game. Don't think I see enough variety in the visuals here. It kind of seems like you might just be dungeon crawling, getting from one platform to the next platform, and then you're just positioning yourself in a tactical game. Yeah, I just don't think that's the kind of game I want to play. $13.99, whole bunch of languages, single player only. Also kind of feels like the kind of game that should be multiplayer. Here we have a game called Chess Explosion,
I just want to fill the emptiness.
which honestly feels like a different idea on chess. Yeah, the pieces are moving in the same patterns, but instead you're more playing something closer to like a Bomberman experience.
Ladies and gentle goats, follow me.
That might be a little too crazy to control, but I'm willing to give it a chance. $11.99, whole bunch of languages. Let's put that on the follow list.
Louder. Your red petals will soon be
Can we win here?
Behold the fists of immortal supremacy.
Ready to witness my true
Yes, we
strength?
can.
Fists of eternal rage, sundering fist.
We'll meet again.
This might be one of these lucky days where we get all the daily quests done fairly early, which that would be nice. So now we're literally just looking for ranked match. No, we still need 2 more Dragoncraft victories first. Then we could just try to play these 2, which are about the only ones that I think wins. Here we have a game on Steam, If on a Winter's Night for Travelers, which sounds like it's a point-and-click adventure game based on a, like, Shakespeare play or something.
Bow before Dark
But
Dragoon, ruler
it's
of the
free,
skies.
and then it has a supporters pack. It seems like there might be 4 acts. Yeah. Yeah, I guess you put this on the follow list since it's free and see if we get some reviews. It technically already has enough reviews and is free, so I guess I can just skip and put it on the wish list. I am a sucker for point-and-click adventures. This does look interesting animated. It does kind of feel like a very old Scum VM point-and-click adventure with that pixely animation style. I bet it's fairly short. There is something certainly nice to the idea of potentially playing shorter games, although it tends to make it just more difficult to schedule games when I play shorter games. Let's see. Gamatsu says Neo The World Ends With You for PC launches September 28th. It's out now for the PS4 and Switch. I'm not 100% sure, though, if the original The World Ends With You is on even the Epic Games Store, let alone anything else. It is definitely an Epic Games Store exclusive, it looks like, for now. We had some fears, certainly for companies like Square Enix, where they would get a lot of, where Epic Games Store would get a lot of exclusives and they would stay as exclusives. But honestly, I don't think I've seen any real reason to be afraid of that happening. There's been very few exclusives in general on the Epic Games Store, and most of the games that are exclusive have no real demand that you need to play them in the first 6 months. I guess if I had nothing else to play, there might be a different feeling there, but it's kind of hard to have nothing else to play when you have hundreds of games on the Steam account. Gamatsu says, ever tried? Launches October 21st. This is an isometric tactical roguelite game. Which, that's a lot of descriptions, certainly. Can we maybe see some video and get a better idea of how that would actually play? I don't think there's really a reason why you would want to be playing on a platform like this where it's just squares on squares. And sure, compared to like Binding of Isaac Rebirth, there's many rooms that are just square rooms, but they visually change it up and don't make it so obvious that you're just always in the same square environment. Yeah, I don't find anything particularly impressive there. Right, so let's go ahead and give this guy a boost. That's the one you'd want to boost. And we'll go ahead and evolve this guy and take out some people.
Hunger is sharper than any blade. Guaranteed. Freshness guaranteed.
The moon is beautiful tonight.
Puzzle Bobble 3D Vacation Odyssey for the PS5, PS4, and PlayStation VR launches October 5th. So, yeah.
Dreams are what kept me alive.
The Puzzle Bobble game
Fruit flies.
soon to come out. And there's definitely something that I think doing 3D versions of Puzzle Bobble or Bubble Bobble games makes some sense.
Fruit flies.
Of course, then translating that back into non-VR versions, it's questionable whether that will still work, but it probably will. Right, we can play this one, or we can play this one. Let's do this.
Magic is a sound. I just feel the emptiness.
Ready to witness my true strength?
There's more than one way to think before you act.
So if this card is... If this card has charge, he probably can... I mean, Storm, he could probably win in this next turn. If he can play anything with Storm, just getting a big power up. Okay. So, evolve. I don't want to really play that right now.
Think before you act.
Yeah, all he has to really do is manage to find a way to do 3 damage to me, and he'll win.
Did I want gold again?
Gamatsu says a sci-fi survival game called Beyond Contact for PC is now available for early access. This is another example of a game that, I guess, from Koch Media, that's a pretty big company, to just not put any advertisement in it at all.
But make it fashion.
One of the reasons I can imagine that is because it looks like it is really just a Minecraft in space, which isn't a terrible idea. But also there was that 3D game where you would die over and over again and respawn, where you would crash land on a planet. And I wonder if they didn't want to be compared to that game. Although, in all fairness, that game came out and I can't even remember its name because of just how poor it seemed it was.
The time to awaken is here. My raging flames have got your back.
Oops.
Twig won't do
I didn't
a
realize
thing.
this guy was going to have Storm. I could have won. I could have messed up my chance of victory there.
Victory is exhilarating.
Yeah, a Minecraft in space might make some sense, but the thing about Minecraft is Minecraft has to just... any kind of Minecraft clone has to gain a player base that is as big and successful as Minecraft was, and that's just a tall order. Otherwise, it's gonna fizzle out and just not have the years of patches and upgrades and player base still playing it. Let's see. A game called Dandy Ace for the Xbox One and Switch launches September 28th. The PS4 version is still in production. Let's see if we can check out what Dandy Ace is. Once again, it seems like we're getting now announcements for games that haven't been teased before. And I wonder if that's because things are now trying to be rushed towards a holiday release time. This could be a case that all the AAA games are getting delayed, so now these games that we're planning on releasing in those delay windows are now trying to move outside of those delay windows. This looks like this is maybe an interesting game and seems to be kind of inspired by a Mexican developer, because there seems to be some Spanish showing up in that language. Let's see. The game Dandy Ace is going to have a Twitch mode for live stream shenanigans. Call upon your viewers to provide aid or hinder your progress in Twitch enabled game mode. I think we'll see that in that gimmick in a lot of games for the next couple of years, and then it'll probably disappear as very few people take advantage of it. Plus, there's some news even today that may spell the end of Twitch as you know it.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Let's see, Gamatsu has an article. The Warplane arcade shooter Red Wings American Aces has been announced for Switch and PC. Features both local and online player versus player and co-op. I assume that this is a dogfighting game where you're fighting in planes. There might be something here. I'm willing to forego the need for like hyper realistic graphics in a dogfighting game. There was a Snoopy dogfighting game that came out that I kind of liked for a while. Although in all fairness, I don't know how much single player content was really there. Let's see. Gamatsu says the Atelier series has launched a 25th anniversary website, which, if anything, it highlights in the West the lack of fandom of the Atelier series, because here you have the Atelier Ryza characters, and this is, I think, Sueli series, but then the rest of these characters I do not recognize at all. A lot of these images look fairly old. A lot of female protagonists being shown. Certainly that may be a male protagonist, that might be a male protagonist. there's a male protagonist there. But yeah, it does kind of feel like for a series that started in 1997, that they have not brought it over to the West. But with the success in the West, they now have the opportunity to potentially do that.
I'll head the vanguard.
There's nothing that indicates any new announcements going to happen anytime soon. But it is worth mentioning that the website is in English, Japanese, and Chinese. So they are trying to get a larger audience. In the same vein, the Senran Kagura series has launched a website for its 10th anniversary. Probably, maybe the same publisher. Senran Kagura being the Lewd Ninja Anime Girls series. But it's questionable how many more of these will actually be able to be made and released. That is the concern, certainly. And it is definitely questionable how many of the Senran Kagura games really go over a line that would make them unacceptable on YouTube. I think there's a decent chance you could play all the Senran Kagura games on YouTube and either have to do minimal editing, censorship, or none at all, because it just goes towards the lewd content, not the actual nude content. Well, do we want to do anything? I think we have to just protect ourselves.
Got your back. That twig won't do a thing.
Heavy.
Here we have a game on Steam called Raising Torolith, which seems to be probably just a polygonal nothing game. They're calling it first-person platformer. I'm not sure if... Yep, it is just platforming, and asset flips and platforming. $5.39 English only. No real reason why you'd have polygonal feudal imagery for a platformer, as far as I could figure. Let's see.
Let us pierce the twilight flank here. Let us end this.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Haunted House: The Murder, which just looks like an asset flip garbage game. $1.79 English and German. Here we have Arisen: Chronicles of Bar Nagal, which is this an actual visual novel? I mean, the art kind of looks nice. It's a narrative card game where you use your emotions to create your own story in a dark fantasy universe.
Have a look-see.
There are some games like that, certainly, where you're mainly forming a story and a narrative based on random card draws. I don't know. I think Dixit is kind of an example of one of those. And then you're starting with them basically being slaves. Which that's pretty crazy way to start a story. Yeah. Early access, $17.99 English and French. I'll put this on the fall list. But I do have to question the gameplay mechanic there, whether or not it makes a lot of sense to try to lock that into a video game experience instead of having that be something that is specifically a more of a board game experience that you should focus on that kind of experience instead. Because like playing with Dixit, all you really need is the cards, and then you just tell a story. And honestly, it's kind of a early kids style game to encourage storytelling and creativity, where it's not really a win or lose game so much.
My apologies.
And I feel like particularly limiting it into a digital format probably only hurts it and requires a lot of extra animation and extra drawing for no good reason. And then having it based on emotions certainly could be a mess, depending on how emotional somebody is, people playing are, or how open they want to be with their emotions. So maybe in a video game format, people would have more of a safe space to talk about their emotions. There might be some value there. Although mostly in video games, people just want to turn their brain off and not think that much. Okay, I think we can win here.
Behold the fists of immortal supremacy.
There's a lot more where that came from.
Fists of eternal rage, sundering fist.
The power of mortality.
See, next we have a game on Steam called Beyond Contact, which looks to be a survival crafting game. I'm not sure I see anything here that interests me. Early access, $14.99, English only. This little cutscene looks nice enough, but wait a minute. This is the game we were just talking about, wasn't it? Alright, well, I'll put it on the follow list. Yep, already out. Yeah.
Victory is exhilarating.
Not sure I trust Beyond Contact to be good. I think we can now play with any deck we want. Next we have a game on Steam called Sheltered 2, which I thought Sheltered 1 came out a really long time ago, and I'm not sure the Sheltered 2 didn't come out. It's mixed reviewed already. Let's see if this developer... Yeah, Sheltered 1 came out in 2016, and it's rated very positively. And I just kind of never went anywhere with it. It has kind of more of a pixely, cartoony art style to it. Survival management game. So, what is going on with Shelter 2 4 years later, or 5 years later, that people are not happy about it? $17.99, whole bunch of languages. Let's see what the reviews have to say. The art style probably changed. Probably isn't making a lot of people happy. So here we have a review. I have 150 hours in the original Sheltered. After an hour playing Shelter 2, it just feels clunky. The user interface is rough. Finding what you need is difficult. The assigning your characters to tasks just feels like a chore. The game needs a lot of polish and feels like a less intuitive version of the original with improved. Personally, I prefer the original graphics. The game leaves a lot to be desired, and I'm so far very disappointed because I was very excited for this game after spending so much time playing the original, contemplating a refund. And that reviewer has 112 products in their account. But you know, that might be some of the shenanigans here with the cheap, low effort games, or free games that are cheap, low effort. It would be pretty easy to make a fake account and then have a list of free games or very cheap games to buy, just so it looks like you have a lot of games in your account to review. Like getting 200 products, not particularly hard. Here's another review that says the gameplay is horrible, the interface is unintuitive, nothing is explained, the technical standards are an insult, and there are bugs everywhere. The game is unfinished. Yeah, I would also, not just to pile on specifically Unicube, say that Team 17, if I'm recalling this correctly, is not particularly great as a publisher. As far as the games they've released, there's quite a list here that look like something that might have been interesting, but then a lot of them that are kind of just mixed reviewed. Like, the Team 17 was known as the Worms creator originally, but they're trying to get away from that and be a publisher, and I think in that shift they really screwed up. And some of their games that they're publishing, obviously very popular though, but they're dropping the ball. They certainly got built into the Escapist series, and that became super popular. And then let's go ahead and play that. I think the main thing to take away from the experience as far as Team 17 and being a publisher is that if they wanted to be a good publisher, they really needed to be very careful about what they chose to publish. I think Gearbox, trying to be a publishing company, also ran into that problem, certainly, where they published some pretty bad games as their first thoughts. I see EU is on the chat. Random question. What is the origin of your channel, aka why did you create your channel? I was a very heavy video gamer most of my life, a very heavy Nintendo fanboy most of my youth, and mostly only played Nintendo games. There was a period as I was working a job for about 5 years where I was being forced to work, for lack of a better term, suicide shifts of just designed to drive people crazy and make sure that you couldn't ever apply for a different job. And I would come home and play Xbox 360s. One of my coworkers encouraged me to do that, and just wanted to play. A couple of my coworkers actually wanted me to play with them during the Xbox 360 era. I didn't play a lot of online, but every now and then I would play with them. And so I was playing Xbox 360 for quite a bit, and having already been a major gamer, I got somewhere around 65,000 gamer score on my Xbox 360 account, which at some point I lost the password to. And yeah, so I transitioned from playing all the Nintendo consoles to Xbox 360 fairly consistently. I was mostly always playing video games of some amount. There was a brief few years where I was more of an anime fan, and so I was focusing a lot more on watching anime than playing video games, but I was still playing a decent amount of video games during that time. And then after the job was driving me crazy and taking up all my time, after that job wrapped up, I kind of fell into a bit of a slump as far as video games and didn't play games for a few, maybe 2 or 3 years at all. Like, I'm sure I played a few games, but I was not heavily focused on it. I was just not really in the mood of it, and if you'd asked me at the time, I probably, without even really recognizing it, would have probably had to say that I just kind of fallen out of love with video games and possibly would have never played them again. And after a while from that last job, and when I was in the slump of the not playing video games, I started to play Binding of Isaac and FTL on, at my time it was a gaming laptop. And so I was playing it a lot and I was liking it a lot, and there was definitely a influence there because of YouTubers and YouTube becoming a theme and a thing, and watching other people play games, Minecraft people also. And so that brought me back into playing video games. And so for maybe 6 months to a year, when I got back to playing video games, I eventually realized that I was kind of bored out of my mind just playing by myself. It felt a little bit hollower in the new world, in a world where we'd hit a level where you could record videos on your computer yourself and you could upload those videos for free to YouTube. Those are all things that were just not things you could have done in the past. All of a sudden there was just more options, and because of those more options, I decided to just try it. Like, there isn't really a big motivating factor. I was just saying, hey, I'm sitting here being bored out of my mind, sitting in silence for several hours while playing Binding of Isaac, and I'm not spending a lot of time day to day talking to anybody, or speaking out loud and all. So I said, hey, let's just do it, and so I made a video and I put it on YouTube. And when it came down to the balance of, do I want to play games and make no historical record of me playing video games, or do I want to play games and make a historical record of me playing video games, I decided, hey, it's not that much more effort to just have that historical record. It's morbid to say, but I do kind of come at my channel as like, this is the lasting history. This is the epitaph on my gravestone whenever I do die. Hopefully my YouTube channel never gets deleted and stays up forever. Hopefully even 100 years from now people can go back if they want to. I doubt if anybody will, and they can see the massive amount of content. Hopefully somebody out there can find reasons why they would want to see my content. And it definitely started from the idea of just, hey, I know I'm shouting into the void and I'm not really talking to anybody, but if you were the last man on Earth, do you want to be the last man on Earth who can't talk to anybody and stays in silence and just lets their vocal cords atrophy? Or do you want to be the last man on Earth who is just talking to himself and rambling that way, and at least then you can hear your own voice? And so I said I wanted to be the latter, and definitely my channel just started originally as just talking. There's a lot of just random talk and talking about just anything and everything. In a lot of ways, it may have been an establishment in my mind that I had more opinions than even I thought I had. But eventually I tried to make it a little bit more professional, and I think in the long run it is better to try to be a bit more professional and
I bestow upon you
focus
my
in
lightning.
and say, hey, I am a video game critic. Hey, I do actually have opinions on games, and I do have something to say. Everybody has something to say. Just a lot of people don't realize they have something to say, and often what people have to say is not worth anything, including what I have to say. But yeah, there was no big reason. It's just everybody else had already done it. Honestly, I wish I had done it 5 years earlier. I would have probably still been in a decent position where I could have made a YouTube channel 5 years earlier. And maybe at that point I would have been a much more successful YouTuber. But you can't really take that as advice or anything, because it is what it is. If you want to start a YouTube channel today is better than tomorrow. It's just going to get more and more difficult. It would have been nice if there was a new YouTube replacement coming out and you could get in on the ground floor of that. I've tried a couple of services like that where it's easy to just copy what's coming from YouTube on those things. But I don't think I've gotten a lot of views on any of those services. I think DTube is an example of one of those that I'm listed on. But yeah, there's kind of nothing super impactful there. I can generally, without giving up too much information, say, yeah, there was throughout that period, there was a lot of time where I was struggling with jobs, and I was definitely in the adult era of life that sucks for most people. So there was a lot of co-workers, bosses, and just jobs in general that were taking up a lot of my time and not really paying me enough, in my opinion, for what they were taking up. And they were sucking up just every last drop of humanity that was in me, all in favor of using me up and throwing me away like a piece of trash. And so there was a lot of frustration and a lot of stress and a lot of lack of sleep and a lot of just badness happening in the Xbox 360 era of my life, and just the not playing video games at life. There's a lot of self-loathing, frankly, where I just often would think to myself, and I just thought of this earlier today, it's like my internal voice is kind of a jerk to me a lot of times. It's like I wish when my own mental internal voice talks to me, it talked a little bit nicer to me. But there was a lot of time where I didn't feel worthy to play video games. It's like, you don't deserve to play video games. You've done nothing today. You're just sitting around being a bum. There was definitely a desire to make the YouTube at some point be a financial success. It's heavily questionable whether that ever happens. For a brief time, my YouTube channel was making money, but that they changed the rules and now it isn't, and hasn't for at least a year and a half, if not longer. I have a Patreon, but I don't offer anything on the Patreon, so nobody has ever taken me up on supporting me financially on the Patreon. I would really love if my YouTube channel could pay me somewhere around $2,500 a month. That would probably pay every bill that I would need to pay, and just set me up nicely. I don't really have any goal to make much more than that. I'm not trying to be a millionaire or anything, but just a nice livable wage, certainly. And I know for a lot of people in the world, $2,500 is probably a ridiculously large amount of money, but for my region, where I live in the US, it's about right.
Cycles
And but yeah, most of the things I did with my YouTube channel were not particularly thought through. I didn't come into it with a master plan or anything, thinking that, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to cover this and I'm going to play this game and this game is going to be super popular and that's going to be the thing that makes my channel excel and be successful compared to every other channel. There's a couple choices, certainly. I'll say when I covered Minecraft games, I was definitely trying to get a Minecraft boost. When I played Hearthstone, I was trying to get a Hearthstone boost. I definitely played a lot more Hearthstone than I probably would have if it weren't for the fact that Hearthstone's games were footage was actually succeeding and getting a lot of views. There definitely are even now some considerations where I want to play some of the Lego games, not solely because I enjoy the Lego games, but also because I feel like they'll probably get a little bit more views. Kerbal Space Program, definitely a game that I went into it trying to get more views in a brief period when Kerbal Space Program was very popular, and I did, but also in that case I really enjoyed Kerbal Space Program, and so that was a happy occurrence where I actually found something new that I liked when I'm not sure I would have specifically tried to play Kerbal Space Program. Some of the visual novels I've played have come out as different from what I was expecting, and I'm glad I tried them, but I also know that I don't want to become somebody who just plays visual novels non-stop, because they're way too long and it's way too much reading, and that's kind of too much for me. And then there also have been some games that I thought I would have really liked, and then there's just something about them I didn't like. I would highly recommend anybody who wants to make a YouTube channel to just go ahead and do it, but also go ahead and do it if you think you can go for at least a year consistently making footage for at least one video a week. For a year, for free. Really just building up maybe a portfolio of this is what I can do as a content creator, but even at that, you're building up a portfolio for a job that doesn't exist. But yeah, if you don't think you can make at least one video a week, and if you are releasing only one video a week, you probably should do a lot of editing and a lot of work into it, then it's not worth it. And I would say in general, if you're young, if you're below 18 years old, don't make a YouTube channel. I don't think you should be allowed to in the first place, but you're not going to succeed, and there's better things you can be doing with your life than making a YouTube video. I'd say you're better off just playing video games with your friends. Of course, right now in the pandemic, it might be the case that the best way to play with your friends is not solely through online play, but also through making videos and sharing them with your friends, although I don't know if your friends are really going to watch your videos. But yeah, in general, YouTube video or any project, the worst thing to do is to never try. So try it. Don't invest a lot. It's super easy to start a YouTube video channel. It's free except for the equipment, and you can get an Xbox One controller and a headset, a cheap headset that plugs into an Xbox One controller, and that can be your microphone to start with. That's exactly what I did. I was playing on a gaming laptop that was a pretty expensive one in its day, but it was also probably 6 or 7 years old when I was playing it. Games on Steam are super cheap. It's there really is very little barrier to entry to start and try. But honestly, I would also say if you've got anything else better going on in your life, maybe double down and focus on that. I was definitely more of the closer to the stereotype of the sad kid, just living in a basement, playing video games all day with no friends, and wasn't going out, wasn't hanging out with people, wasn't doing anything really. So this was a very good hobby to pick up, and because I had spent most of my youth being the sad kid who was playing video games, mostly alone, I had a decent amount of experience, which led to having a actual level of expertise as far as making references and knowing what to expect. So yeah, I think that's probably all I have to say to answer that question. Yeah, that is a weird way to make a story when there is no story there. I probably should create some made-up narrative origin of it, but yeah. The one thing I will say is my decision to make a YouTube channel playing video games came from a very honest direction, whereas I have definitely seen a lot of other YouTubers who are successful for something else decide that they want to make a video game spin-off channel because they think they can get more views. And that always comes off as a very dishonest and disingenuous attempt. And often I'll see a lot of YouTubers who want to be stand-up comedians or just personalities try to lean on video games as their base source for their jokes. Like Game Grumps does a pretty good job at that, but if you really objectively look at Game Grumps, it's two comedians making jokes and they're sort of playing video games. Whereas there are honest people who are trying to actually play the video game to either show off their skill playing the video game or to show off their criticism and opinions of video games. And when you look at like Geek and Sundry, when it originally launched, I think that's kind of a great example of the Lionsgate production company paying and hiring people to act like they're nerds, maybe not video game nerds in that case, but just nerds in general, to promote and make content to just gain an audience base, just to get people watching whatever they have to show without really there being any actual love or desire around the content they were making. And particularly when you see that and you look at the history of Geek and Sundry, after about 3 or 4 years in which they couldn't, at a certain point they were just trying to get people to kickstart and directly fund the production of these videos, and they couldn't even get the funding there. The people working at Geek and Sundry and the type of content at Geek and Sundry drastically changed. I would say probably the more cynical instance I've seen of this is there have been a lot of personalities on YouTube that all of a sudden have decided to have Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channels where they're just playing Dungeons and Dragons, which is a even longer video game experience than most video games. And I'm sure there are some people that honestly enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons or got into Dungeons and Dragons and decided to make a channel off of it. But I think a lot of people also saw that it was very easy to play Dungeons and Dragons and make footage out of that and are just trying to appeal to that audience. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say. EU says thank you for answering my question. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Narita Boy. This is an older game that I wanted to check out. It's on the following list, so I guess I was waiting for it to get reviews so I can put it on the wish list. This one in motion, I think, looks a lot better than it does in stationary images. So it's one of these Team 17 games. Hack and slash game. So we'll put that on the wish list. And then we have Potion Craft Alchemist Simulator, which is overwhelmingly positive. It must have come out of early access. Nope, still in early access. Whole bunch of languages, $13.49. This actually looks like this might be a decent experience. It's interesting how the potion seems to move around the map when you're crafting it. I'm not sure there's really a game here I'd want to play still, but boy does this look like it has a unique art style and actual polish to it. So I'm going to put it on the follow list. Let's see, I guess we attack here and then play this. And just end the turn. I can see the beginning of the end, so we need to cover the news. Let's see, GameDeveloper.com has added new members to its advisory board. So they have Osama Dorias, which, from what I would assume, when you make these pictures, you should be in the same order as you name them. I'm assuming these are actually alphabetical by last name. That would make the most sense. But I would assume that this is Osama Darius. And this would be Caroline Markle. And this would be Chris Zimmerman. But yeah. I don't know if the game developers, GDC, Game Developers Conference, for 2022, which is, I guess, different than GameDeveloper.com, and yeah, it's important, I guess, to mention that. Yeah, I don't know if they really needed more advisory people. Let's see. Osama Darius is the senior game designer for WB Games Montreal. Caroline Markle is the CEO and creative director of Interior/Night. And Chris Zimmerman is the studio head emeritus of Sucker Punch. And I assume mostly the advisory board is going to vote on winners of the GDC presentation and not really do anything else, because GDC really is just a collection of people giving speeches. It really doesn't need that much oversight. GameDeveloper.com says the Activision Blizzard faces SEC investigation following misconduct allegations. We probably already talked about this. It is, I suppose, worth mentioning that the Security and Exchange Commissions is looking at this from a very different perspective compared to the fair employment perspective that the state of California is looking at it. SEC feels is going to come kind of from the perspective of, we don't care if Activision Blizzard harassed employees or did anything bad. We care if you did not properly disclose that you did these bad things to the shareholders and thus stole money out of the rich shareholders' pockets. This literally is a case of the government protecting rich people, which, in all fairness, most governments are usually protecting rich people and rich people's interests and not really protecting just average people's interests. If anything, the SEC's investigation could complicate or interfere with the employment investigation of California. And it could be quite the mess if the SEC and the federal government comes back with a glowing dismissal of all accusations and saying that Activision Blizzard is doing great, while the state of California makes the exact opposite claim.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Is that how you treat a lady? Is that how you treat a lady?
Although that really wouldn't have any legal weight. Let's see. We, I think, also covered that the Blizzard Entertainment's chief legal officer has departed. We had talked about this. We're kind of just covering old news since there isn't a lot. EA veterans have netted $3.5 million to create a debut project at a new studio called FuzzyBot, which is an interesting name. You know, there is a slight risk at potentially supporting a bunch of EA employees, but I think most of the hate for EA is around the management of EA, and I'm not sure that too many people feel that it is the game programmers and the developers themselves of EA games that are to be blamed. That being said, they've been under this bad leadership of their management for so long that it's very possible that a group of EA veterans cannot get a project done on a budget, cannot make a good game in general, because they're just so used to having to make bad games. This FuzzyBot was formed in 2020 and wants to create genre-crossing content with imaginative worlds, which makes it seem like it's more focused towards kids' games. Overwatch 2's executive producer is leaving Blizzard. That is Checo Sony, a popular high-level Blizzard employee who helped shepherd the Overwatch franchise. Yeah, pretty much everybody is leaving Activision Blizzard. Almost certainly it is a cascading effect, and only the most stubborn or foolish employees are going to stick with Activision Blizzard, thinking that maybe they'll ride out a storm. And maybe you will. I mean, if you really just stuck with it, maybe you will become the new boss, but you'll be the boss of pretty much nothing.
Thus the world begins.
Let's go ahead and just evolve and attack.
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how you treat a lady? Is that how you treat a lady?
So here we have news that I talked about before. This may be the beginning of the end as far as Twitch. Twitch has cut a deal with the National Music Publishers Association, which is, I guess, different than the NPAA, which I think might be the Movie Association. Or maybe I'm just making that up and there is no NPAA. They've struck a deal with the National Music Publishers Association to better manage unauthorized music being played on Twitch streams. That pretty much probably kills, I would guess, 60% at least of all streams. Yeah, 60% of all old streams, particularly, specifically, may just have no replayability or reviewability. But that has always been the problem with Twitch anyways, is that there is no chance that a Twitch stream is going to be seen even 48 hours after it airs in almost every scenario. Whereas when starting my channel, one of my desires was to make content that maybe 10 or 20 years down the line somebody wants to see, and it can be a historical reference. But yeah, I've never felt like Twitch has a path to allow streamers of video games in particular to actually succeed as streamers of video games. And with the continued problem of hot tub streamers and just Twitch thoughts in general, it seems like the real desire as far as Twitch was always to just be this extremely soft core porn for prepubescent teenagers.
Thus the world
Whoa,
begins.
you're strong.
And they have really not, they came in like a Trojan horse pretending to be for game streamers.
From suffering.
On top of game streaming and Twitch thought streaming, there's been very little other kinds of streams that I think particularly succeed well on Twitch also. So I've never been super hot on it. Pinball streaming was the one thing that in my mind maybe would have been a little bit better, but even that really has no reason to be on Twitch. YouTube stole any feature that Twitch had. Maybe took them 6 months to a year to steal that feature, but Twitch never could get a trademark or patent on the features it was adding, so... And now YouTube is much more interested in stealing things from Instagram and other services that are more popular and doing something slightly different. Although sometimes YouTube does just abandon its attempts on some features too. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says Quantic Dream has won one liable lawsuit and lost another over reporting on alleged misconduct. The French newspaper Le Monde has been found guilty of libel, while the outlet Mediapart has been exonerated, oddly for reporting on the same set of events. And I bet this is a case, with just reading that headline, where Le Monde made the direct claim and Mediapart reported it as an allegation that Le Monde was making. And that was probably the difference. And that is probably the wiggle room you will have in almost all news reporting in any relatively free free country. Let's see. Which, this is what I've been saying the whole time, is that I feel like these French newspapers, maybe not specifically just Le Monde and Mediapart, but French newspapers seem to have been actively trying to libel video game companies in France. And the French video game companies are successfully proving that what the claims that are being made are just sensationalized lies or misrepresentations. Let's see. Found guilty of libel, actual civil offense. Of course, Game Developer has its own propaganda way it wants to present this. So he goes, at first glance, this may seem to successfully rebuff against the many reports, many of those re-reported by Game Developer, of alleged sexist and racist behavior that took place at the studio. However, in an head-scratching move, the judge found that the partner outlet Mediapart had not committed libel over its reporting on the same subject. I'd like to see, like, a YouTube lawyer cover this lawsuit, even if they don't particularly know French law better, but I suspect it is much closer to the part that the claims made were false, or at least very inaccurate enough to rise to the level of libel. And Mediapart Yep. All we're getting here.
Stop! No!
The distinction between the two cases has to do with Le Monde's refusal to name its anonymous sources during the lawsuit. This may have put the news outlet in legal jeopardy thanks to the standards for proving liable under French law. So they didn't want to admit who their anonymous source is, or very possibly they don't have an anonymous source and they just made it up, which that would be even worse, but that would be something I would consider a possibility. Like, I think there are definitely news stories that go out in even fairly reputable newspapers where they straight up make up stories and claim to have an anonymous source. There's not a good system here to have one newspaper company confirm that the other newspaper company has an anonymous source. And even if you are just going to a newspaper company and you say you want to be anonymous, it's fairly easy to lie. And the news people are supposed to vet their sources, and they don't.
Punish the wicked, spare the innocent. Let judgment fall.
The moon is beautiful tonight.
You're in good hands.
So, yeah, as I'm reading this, it seems like what happened here is LeMonda refused to name its sources, where Mediaport successfully defended its reporting practice and lawsuit by simply saying, well, our source is LeMonda. Either that or Mediaport actually did list its sources. Considering that Mediaport and LeMonda collaborated on producing their reports on Quantic Dream's alleged misconduct. Really, should it even be alleged at this point? I guess you have to say alleged, because now disproven is kind of too big of a statement.
By your will,
This is definitely a case that I think needs to go to appeal. Like both, I think Quantic Dream will probably appeal the finding against Mediaport, and LeMonda will appeal the finding against them. And there needs to be some better explanation as to how you can get two outcomes when two people work together and made a claim and one was found to be liable and one wasn't. That feels like one lawyer was just better than the other. Here's an interesting story. The Quantic lawsuit producer produced some unusual events during the proceeding. At one point, the trial, Quantic Dream co-founder allegedly turned to the judge to confirm that he was not under legal oath and asked out loud if he could lie in court before stating that Mediaport and LeMonda reportedly severely harmed Quantic Dream. Which I bet this is probably a bad way of saying that too. Because almost certainly in court, there are times when you might be under oath, and you see it on TV even where the judge will go, let me remind you that you're still under oath and you're expected to tell the truth. I wouldn't be surprised if he was just confirming and stating on the record, yes, I'm still under oath and I still cannot lie. That also being translated from French would make a lot of sense. And see, all of this really is more just kind of another story about how maybe you don't want to deal with French law and French employees. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of people and money going to like Embracer Group in Sweden, or the Witcher 3 company, which I think is, I don't think they're Ukrainian, but they're not French for sure, or UK businesses as far as game developers. I just don't think the old stereotype of the French being a pain in the butt still seems to kind of be believable. And yeah, I would not want to have a business or do business with a company that is at threat even of being embroiled in liable accusations and lawsuits. In the same way that I wouldn't want to do business with Activision Blizzard, I wouldn't want to do business with Ubisoft or Quantic Dream, even if it turned out that all the accusations against all three of those companies were false. It's just the air of impropriety is already there. See, moving on, we have a game on Steam called A Long Journey to Farewell, which looks like just a regular RPG game. Early access, free, English allegedly full audio. I don't think there's any reason to put that on the fall list. Here we have a game called Traffic Chase, which looks like nothing. $7.49, English only. Here we have a game called Mud River, which looks like a side-scrolling shooter, but not quite enough visual polish, and it feels a little asset flippy still. $2.54, English, Portuguese, Brazil. These feel like realistic photographs that have just been cropped to put in games, and that art style really needs a lot of polish and a lot of effort to work, and I just don't see it there. Let's see. This. And then this. And then this.
What's this?
And I guess we do this.
Yeah.
You
I like
better.
this job. Of course I do.
Next we have a game on Steam called Wolfie's Breakout, which is a dog breakout Arkanoid clone, which that doesn't really make sense. $4.99, English full audio. If I'm gonna play a game as a dog, I want to actually do dog things, not just play a breakout clone. Here we have a game called Get in the Car Loser, which I feel like there had been a game like that already. I think there was a game called No Time to Explain. It's being described as a lesbian road trip RPG by the co-creator of Lady Killer in a Bind, which I'm not sure Lady Killer in a Bind was ever actually that successful. Yeah, and it's mixed reviewed. I wonder why. Free. And then really $8.99, I think, for the real full totality of the game. English only. Let's see what these reviews have to say. Well, let's play first. Guess you do this, this, and this. And
Let us conclude. Let's revel in the fall.
Rest
alright. Okay, so we have a review here. As someone who is a big fan of Christy Love's work ever since Digital Love Story and has enjoyed pretty much every release she put out, including the controversial Don't Take It Personally, it somewhat pains me to give it Get in the Car Loser a red thumbs down. However, I want to point out to start the review that the game is a game you'll either love or dislike depending on some very subjective key factors. This is a game who knows it's on the audience it's looking for.
I envy you.
The game is really colorful and nice to look at. This is way too long of a review. It has an aesthetic that feels very modern, invoking a look you'd see in contemporary animated shows like Steven Universe. Think it was the right choice for the game and a real highlight. no issues with the visuals. The thing is, it either leaves me cold, uninterested, or slightly repelled. The writing is fun and overall, and comes back to the first paragraph of this review. If you like the game that's heavy on the sort of terminally online twee irony humor, you'll love it. I generally liked the characters and felt they were all fine, but I was never really entertained by the writing as much as it wanted me to be. Similarly, the first scene of the game tells you exactly what you're getting. I found it a bit too on the nose. Well, alright, so that's why. This game is a JRPG combat meets Wheels of Aurelia, but with high school age characters and some kind of Harry Potter nonsense. That's at least a more brief review. So it seems like the writing is the problem here, which I could definitely see that. Like, particularly the more SJW games seem to be, they seem to want to send out a message first and foremost and not make a good game if they don't have to. I'm gonna put this on the fall list to give it more of a chance, but I suspect this will never make it to the fall list, to the wish list. At some point I did buy Lady Killer in a bind. Interesting. I don't even know when I did that, but then the Hate Plus and the Hate series, which analog a Hate story, isn't even on the wish list because I think it was just a little bit too much of a visual novel and too simplistic. And you can see just from the screenshots of analog a Hate story that those games are very simplistic, and it wasn't until Lady Killer in a Bind came around that it seemed to get more of a push. Arguably, whenever I get around to playing Lady Killer in a Bind, I suspect it might be a mainstream video game journalist critical darling and not much of a real game. That is still a factor with Deathloop right now, is that I'm basically hearing nobody have anything of actual substance to say about Deathloop. They're now starting to even talk about the ending and saying that the ending really doesn't explain everything that you would want explained, and it just lets you keep on playing the game, which maybe it gets explained in DLC. But honestly, this may very well be a case where there was just blatant, absolute, straight up bribery around Deathloop, because I cannot find a video game review of that game that says anything that justifies it getting more than a 7.5 out of 10. It honestly, it probably doesn't even deserve that much as far as what I can tell from other reviewers. And I've no interest in playing Deathloop unless somebody wants to friend me on Steam and gift it to me to find out for myself. I would much rather get around to playing Dishonored 2 or the Dishonored Death of the Outsiders spin-off game.
This'll be over quick.
So yeah, I really need to take that final step and just stop following mainstream video game journalists like Giant Bomb at all. Which Giant Bomb is weird now. They're bringing back Ben Brode, which was the super tall guy who kind of wasn't qualified to work at Giant Bomb when he was first hired there, and he worked at Giant Bomb, so I guess he's sort of qualified now, but I wouldn't say by much. And he left, I think, in 2020's end of the year game discussion, and now he's just coming back with, I mean, I don't think he really made a YouTube channel or tried to do anything else. I think Ben Brode is also off dating a non-binary person because he was constantly referring to his partner as his partner instead of saying boyfriend or girlfriend. But maybe he was just super woke and protecting the privacy of his boyfriend and girlfriend, and I guess I don't really care. There is something to potentially bringing him back, since the content he wanted to make and the content he was covering was not very video game focused. So bringing back Ben Brode to the new Giant Bomb, which is super not video game focused, is in line with that idea. You could also put on your tinfoil hat and think that maybe some of the Giant Bomb East people had real problems with Ben Brode, or Ben Brode had real problems with the Giant Bomb East people, and so it was them or Ben, and when all of the Giant Bomb East people left, that Ben Brode got the opportunity to come back. That is a possibility. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just that they mostly mutually parted ways, and since there weren't any burnt bridges, bringing somebody back is something you can do. Although generally not something I'd suggest doing in a job. After somebody leaves a job, even on the best of situations, I would, as a boss, never hire them back. Like, that there's when you take that final step to either fire somebody or somebody takes the final step to leave a job, that should just be the end of the relationship. A new random employee offers new opportunities, whereas an old employee is just going to bring back all the problems it had before.
The truth will cut you down.
Yeah, it's not particularly good for Ben Brode's career to go back to a job he already left. It's not particularly good for hiring people to bring back somebody who has already left you once, because then you're getting an employee who may quit or you may have to fire. Like, the only other tinfoil hat thought is that Ben Brode did something that was so incredibly bad that he was suspended effectively for 6 months, and they called it a firing and then brought him back. Or maybe Ben Brode ended up in jail for 6 months and couldn't do his job.
Is fighting and despair all
But
you
yeah,
know?
at the core of it, he's not a good video game reviewer. I don't know if he reviewed any of the video games. So it really is just yet another step showing that Giant Bomb is not really trying to hire or cover video games, and instead is trying to be this new, just general websites to cover anything and everything. It's trying to be much closer to a mix between what Whiskey Media and CNET was, if you mix those two. Yeah. Here we have someone on the chat, Claysdale Live, saying hello, H-A-L-O, halo. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Battlecruiser Generations, which just looks like a bad, low-effort space game. $6.99, English only. Here we have a game called Simple Sky, which just looks like a space top-down shooter. Early access, $9.99, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game that's in Asian characters that seems to be really just rendering mountains and nothing else. 99 cents, Chinese only. We have a lot of news that I should have talked about earlier, but we'll just talk about it here. Here we have a game on Steam called Lost Cube, which It looks a little too asset flippy. $9.99, English and Chinese. Let's see. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hand with Hand, which seems to be just an asset flip first-person shooter with anime girls around. And here you have a very basic saver. So you're going to these control points, shooting zombie people, and when you get to the control points, you get to see an anime person that you rescue. 89 cents, English only. Like, real low effort. You could potentially create that concept and put some polish into it, and maybe you'd have an experience that's worth talking about, but probably not. I just don't think first-person shooting merges with anime waifus as well as people think it does. Whereas if you were to make something closer to a hack-and-slash Oni-Chamber game, I think that would get more of the Japanese audience interested, and then that would potentially sell better, and then better fund a potential sequel. And it doesn't have to be particularly hack and slash. It could be a punch and kick beat 'em up game, but yeah, when you're going with an Japanese inspired art style as anime, then you have to, I think you're better off considering an audience of the Japanese audience who are not going to relate as much with first-person shooters because they're not in a country where guns are as prevalent or as much of a big thing.
You were done for.
Plus, of course, Asian countries have a long history of swords and hand-to-hand combat, so you would want to lean into those histories. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Slime Frog, which doesn't look like anything other than a platformer. There is something to this idea of having a tongue that sucks you from location to location to swing. I feel like that should probably be an assistive device, not just a difficulty increasing mechanic. This also looks like a game that you're really just going to be playing with your mouse, and it's tagged as a precision platformer. This definitely feels like this would just be really difficult to play. $4.79. I'm going to say no to that. But yeah, if there was a game where it was platforming but not super difficult, precision platforming, and then you had a tongue that saved you, that'd be great. This game is all Asian characters. It's probably a Chinese mobile port. Free to play, Chinese only, in-app purchases. I'm gonna go ahead and play this just to get some more characters on the field. Here we have a game on Steam called Push Your Family, which apparently is a physics-based party game with slapstick humor.
Do not seek what is not there.
I don't think it's probably a great idea to encourage pushing family members. It's slightly different, particularly if this is targeted for younger kids, to have them play a first-person shooter and shoot zombies, which they'll never have a chance to actually do that in the real world, versus pushing people. A kid can push their family members very easily, and that can cause way more damage than anyone would expect. It's very easy to not realize that you could have somebody hit their head and die just being pushed over. So I am oddly more concerned about the idea of potentially encouraging pushing than I am around the idea of potentially having somebody play a first-person shooter game. But outside of that concern, this game also doesn't look like it's really anything of interest. It's early access, $11.99. They're comparing it to Lego Star Wars, which I don't think that's right. Allegedly full audio in every language it supports, even though it doesn't have interface or subtitles for any of the other languages, which, once again, that should not be allowed by the Steam database. There should be absolute rules that say, hey, if your interface does not support French, you don't support French. Don't try to make the argument that these characters speak gibberish and thus you have full voiced lines of dialogue in every language, which is what that should mean. Here we have a game on Steam called Zombie Gunship Survival, which almost feels like it's a bombing run simulator. I don't know if I would want to play a game like this, but I have to applaud the polish here. That feels very realistic, but it also is a cheap way to not have to really animate zombies. But the problem there is that's too realistic. And like I don't want to play a game where I have to think in the back of my head, am I actually controlling a drone somewhere? Am I programming an AI to have actual real-world drones at some point in the future bomb and shoot bullets and be a gunship instead of a bomber, I guess.
I shall give birth to a new world. You okay?
And
It looks like I'm up.
so yeah, I'm gonna say no to Zombie Gunship Survivor because it's just too realistic. That's a weird reason to say no to something, but I'm gonna pick it that time. Here we have a game called Chronicles of Goldurvale, which maybe a little bit of visual polish here. There might be something here in that this is just really early access and this might be something, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's very little here. Single player, English and Chinese, that doesn't inspire confidence. $8.49. I'll put it on the follow list and give it a chance. Here we have one called Sex Robot Road Trip Highway to Harrisburg, which looks like it's MS Paint level graphics trying to do a visual novel. Let's see, this is $6.29. English only. This is probably not anything worth playing, but I'm gonna be generous and put it on the follow list.
You're in good hands.
Let's see if we can
The real battle begins.
save ourselves here and not die in this one turn.
Sisters, I love. I am activated.
You're through.
Yeah, I'm probably dead here
Removed.
because this can attack twice. I'm going to start one more game, but we're very close to the end as far as news. GameDeveloper.com says that Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick says the publisher is complying with the misconduct investigations. I mean, you really can't say anything else, and you really can't do anything else, otherwise you're just going to get in more trouble, so yeah.
Come on.
That it's not really even news to say that. It would be news if he came out and said we intend to not comply and fight this till the end, but Otherwise, you're just quote mining for non-actionable and non-relevant information. Of course he's going to say they're complying, and then of course there are going to be accusations by the other side saying they're not complying. That's how every action and lawsuit goes. It's very common to quote-unquote over-comply with something, and they'll ask for 5 pages of evidence, and you'll give them 5,000 pages of evidence just to waste their time. Gamatsu says the Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy hands-on preview, gameplay, and screenshots are now available if you want to check it out on Gamatsu. It's due out October 26th. A lot of these games do feel like they go into this almost quiet period where the couple of weeks before a game is launched, there's nothing new said, and instead it's just reiterations of things that had already been said, which maybe that's good advertising, maybe it's not, I'm not sure.
It looks like I'm up.
Maybe you just want to try and catch that last group of people that might see your advertisements. It probably has more to do with people getting the game to a gold status and then spending all their effort trying to bug fix after they've gotten it ready to that gold status, where they won't add any new content because they're printing out the discs. Let's see, Gamatsu says the Nintendo Direct is set for September 23rd, tomorrow, featuring 40 minutes of focused on Switch games throughout this winter. So, yeah, this will probably be your Christmas advertisement for Nintendo. The broadcast here is scheduled. Let's see if there's... This is probably not what they're talking about. This is probably the last Nintendo Direct that happened. It would be very weird if at this Nintendo Direct they don't talk about the new game controller, or the new game controller turns out to not be a Nintendo 64 controller. It'd probably be nicer if it wasn't a Nintendo 64 controller and just something different. Just an attempt to introduce a better control mechanic in general to the Switch. Or if they're coming out with a controller that's straight up just for other consoles or PC, that wouldn't be crazy. Like, hey, let's sell some more Joy-Cons. Let's make a Joy-Con version that plugs into PC. Not even say that they're ever going to port video games to the PC. Just say, hey, we're going to sell accessories. Here we have a game on Steam called Fortress Defender, which is just a side-scrolling shooter. $9.99, English and Japanese. Video Games Chronicle says PlayStation 4's latest system update reportedly stops it losing functionality when the CMOS battery dies. The version 9.0 firmware says it's going to fix an issue that stopped users playing games if the battery died. That's really ridiculous that you would not be able to use your device when the battery's died. That being said, I do have a PS3 sitting around that I haven't even turned on in several years. It's just sitting around as a Blu-ray player, which I haven't even bothered to try and watch a Blu-ray in several years. Yep. There's very little reason why you need physical media. Almost everything is on streaming. I guess we'll do one more game since that one quickly disconnected. Here we have a game on Steam called Ayoub Episode 2, and then the developer is written in some, like, Middle Eastern language, Farsi, Sanskrit. I don't know what the right word to even say would be. I can't tell. I can't tell the difference I don't have enough experience between different Middle Eastern languages. I assume this is a Middle Eastern language. I could be wrong about that also. English is not supported. $12.99. Arabic. I guess Arabic is the word to use. As there are very few games in Arabic, it's kind of hard to judge something like this. As a visual novel, it looks fine. It probably is a little short. At $12.99, it might be a little expensive. I don't understand every country's feelings towards video games in the Middle East. But I suspect there are probably quite a few Middle Eastern countries that would not be happy with any video games being made to target that audience or support that audience. But we can say this doesn't seem like this one is a particularly conservative Middle Eastern-wise game. Here you have a anime girl with no kind of hair covering whatsoever. Anime boy doesn't seem to be any kind of more Middle Eastern garb. Seems to be very possibly just a regular old Western style environment. But I guess I can't do anything with it since it doesn't support English. Now this is crazy. Minecraft Dungeons is now available on Steam. I follow Larry Herb on Twitter. I follow enough people who would report on Microsoft announcements. There literally was no announcement whatsoever of this coming out. So either this was put out on accident, or they did not want to advertise it because of pretty much how much of a failure Minecraft Dungeons was. Like, being basically just a bad Diablo clone, like way worse than most Diablo clones, and having the Minecraft art style to it. If anything, the only good thing that could happen from this is that maybe this will be a case where Microsoft will learn to not try and reskin bad games, which this almost certainly was a reskin of just a generic dungeon crawler with Minecraft characters. And if there is going to be another Minecraft game compared to just Minecraft, it needs to be really good and deserve the name Minecraft and not simply be just a generic dungeon crawler. On the other hand, the Telltale game Minecraft Story Mode, I think that worked fine as a game. And that's because Telltale, I think, was really trying. I would hope that whoever greenlit and let Minecraft Dungeons come out the way it was is not going to be in charge of ever making another Minecraft thing. This might also be an argument that maybe Mojang in particular is just not that good of programmers. I mean, at the core of it, I think there probably are some pretty good programmers at Mojang, but the original Minecraft was made by Notch. Notch doesn't work at Mojang anymore, so you didn't keep your main programmer in that case. And clicking on Mojang does not bring up Mojang, but brings up Microsoft's store page, which I think highlights the fact that Minecraft itself is not available on Steam. So, yeah, you also need to be aware of that. That of the Minecraft game you would want on Steam, it would be Minecraft, instead of having to go through Steam's own separate, Minecraft's own separate launcher. Yeah. And I don't see really any evidence that that's gonna happen. Let's see. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says Xbox has named the former IGDA executive Jen McLean as the general manager of creator partnerships, which probably is a good hire. It is another story of nepotism, to say the least, that of just how much the video game industry is about who you know more than how skilled you are. We almost never hear a case where a successful indie game developer that sells a really good game gets hired by a larger business. The closest example I guess I can think of off the top of my head would be the Double Fine CEO who worked for LucasArts, which was not really an indie company, forming Double Fine, and then many years later finally being acquired by Microsoft, well past the point where you would call Tim Schafer, he's the Double Fine CEO, a new personality to the video game scene. Video Games Chronicle says Xbox Live reportedly suffers more outages than the PlayStation Network, but neither comes close to Steam. Research finds gaming websites to be among the most prone to outages. Of course, a reporting like this actually just talks about how popular something is. So if Steam is getting shut down and having the most outages, by far, that just says Steam by far as a website is way more popular, or you can at least take it that way, and the Xbox Live would be more popular than PlayStation Network. The more reported on outages are definitely PlayStation Network, and I very rarely hear that Steam is down. Yet Steam did feel like it was down yesterday, though. Just coincidentally, it did feel like it was down yesterday. That's the first time I've ever seen Steam down that I can think of. Let's see. Tool Tester published a list of what says is 30 websites that experienced the most outages during the 12-month period ending June 25th, 2021. Discord was the first one, then 39% of Steam. Steam was the second with 99 outages out of, I guess, 365 days. 39% of the outages were related to the website going down just ahead of the online gaming problems, which accounted for 38% of the reports. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if specific games have outages all the time, and I just am not playing those games. Although, I'm really not one to know either, because I'm almost always playing solo games, which don't really require the network to be up. It is also possible that there are a lot of outages in certain areas that aren't really the target audience. So if Steam goes down a lot in India, and India's not a target audience, or China would be a better reference there, that may not really be an issue. Let's see. Microsoft suffered 63 outage, 65 related to online gaming being unavailable. Yeah, I think generally a console having an outage would turn off all online gaming for all games, whereas Steam is less likely to have that. And then PlayStation Network took 49 outages, 65% reporting to being users being unable to log in. How many of that 64% in, or 65% in these two have to do with accounts being banned, though? Or even the 39%, 38% here? The way I take this, it says that considerably less gaming outages happen on Steam. Even if the website goes down, who cares if the website goes down for a few minutes? Generally, though, all this information is kind of useless. It is much more of your mileage will vary experience, and if you're not experiencing outages, it doesn't really matter.
All is an illusion.
Here we have a game on Steam called The Revenge of Red Sophia, or Sophia Red. Looks like a horror asset flip game. $13.49, English and German. The game Source of Madness for PC is now available in early access. It includes the complete first act of the game. Let's see. Do we have a trailer to see what game this is? I think this is the one with the kind of Cronenberg-esque characters. A Lovecraftian roguelite. Let's see. Made by an AI. I doubt the game was really made by an AI. Feels kind of like a Diablo game. Let's look at it on Steam. Here we are. It looks like it might be a game worth checking out. Of course, we have to wait for it to come out of early access, so I'll put it on the follow list. It's $16.99, English allegedly full audio. I would suspect maybe not. Let's see. Hit this.
There is not a soul without
Hit
sin.
this.
You're done for.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
Unbelievable.
Yep. Here we have a game on Steam, Blackjack Math Cross Numbers, which,
A glimpse into the
yeah,
future
I don't
is
see
only the
a reason for a single screen math game to make it to the fall list. $1.59. Gear Club Unlimited 2 Unlimited Edition has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And the Definitive Edition has been announced for Switch. Different than the Ultimate Edition, I assume. Probably because I can't squeeze it all onto the Switch version, or didn't bother. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, Sakaretsu, Chorogon Breath. I don't know how you pronounce it. Chorogon?
So this is
Chorogon?
my fate after all.
I don't know how you'd pronounce gone in Japanese. Interesting. Anyways, it's been announced for PS4 and Switch. This is based off of a anime that's been out for a couple of years. Spin-off game. Probably not much to it if I was to guess. A lot of these anime spin-off games come out way too late for them to really have any relevance, and they probably would never have any relevance to the Western audience anyways. And see, the Japanese aren't particularly nostalgic either, so they tend to jump from one anime to the next season after season, 2 or 3 seasons a year,
Punish the wicked.
maybe 4 seasons a year even.
All the fluffy hugs.
Okay.
Let judgment fall.
Mean son of a gun, ain't you?
Unbelievable.
GameDeveloper.com says Amazon Games expands its third-party publishing efforts with a GlowMade partnership. I don't know who GlowMade is. I know Amazon Prime Gaming gives away free games, but it's not been a lot of good games. Let's see.
Oh, Lord.
Trying to read here.
Brighter future for everyone.
Yeah, apparently
No!
UK studio GlowMade.
All is an illusion.
On this article. It's a dedicated team of 25 and counting experienced developers that worked on things like Fable, Little Big Planet, Battlefield, and Horizon Zero Dawn. They're working on a online co-op game. They don't seem to have any game they've ever actually made and released under the Glowmade title, though. That's really not going to inspire a lot of confidence. Then,
Last.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
and
Let us conclude.
So, this is my favorite.
Unbelievable!
And then last two articles I have open. Cupid's Paradise launches November 2nd in North America and November 5th in Europe. This looks like a standard visual novel game. Anime guys. So it's probably an otome, young maiden visual novel targeting young girls or teenage girls. And then Halo's co-creator, according to Video Games Chronicles, says his next major project will divide opinion. Some of you will support it, some will not. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not making anything that is going to feel anything like Halo. Apparently it's this game, Disintegration, playing as a robot. Feels more story focused. Feels like it might very well be closer to a Titanfall game than just a Halo game. I feel like some of the people that worked on Halo went on over to Nope, Disintegration is a game that's already come out and been shut down. So that's not his next project. They should have done a better job of not making it seem that it was. Yep. I wouldn't be surprised to go back to my original thought if the next thing he has to offer and show is extremely, extremely different from anything like Halo, and that he's probably not interested in making the same thing over and over again. Alright, so now I'm gonna go through my Twitter feed. Video Games Chronicle says Best Buy has confirmed that it will be selling PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X consoles in stores this Thursday. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a push and a trick, and there's very few in each store, like one in each store, and they end up having to do raffles and just trying to get people to go into the store. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next month Best Buy just declares bankruptcy and goes out of business. I guess I would also need to do this off screen. So yeah, theoretically I need one more ranked match and to do the arena run. Epic Game Store says the newest version of Auto Chess lands September 23rd. Not sure if people are still playing Auto Chess. And I'm now just scrolling down my Twitter feeds to see if there's any other news, and then we'll end this stream. We got 3 people on the chat. So I do seem to be getting more chat people, probably very much in thanks to EU. Putting comments and interactions. From what I've heard, there seems to be a lot more focus on YouTube now for interactions, thumbs up, comments, things like that, and doing surveys of whether you like a game, like a video or not, compared to even watch time, which was their previous focus. According to this, a Microsoft Exchange auto-discover protocol is leaking hundreds of thousands of email passwords and Windows domain credentials. Yeah. That's not video game related, but data breaches always suck. I pretty much have nothing to say at this point anymore about G4. They'd have to do something really impressive to have any relevancy. That they were given, they definitely had the opportunity to be an amazing return to form and a comeback from failure, and instead of trying to be something that was either a really highly polished video game focused live stream service or even TV channel, they seemingly have decided to just be a generic YouTube channel. And this is going to be very easy because there's just no new news happening these days. So I'm looking at my Twitter feeds and they're like reloading them, and the last post was like 4 hours ago, and since I've only been streaming for 3 hours and 15 minutes, that tells me there's no new news. So, yep, that's going to be it for the stream. As always, wow, I've just blanked on my wrap-up spiel. As always, thank you for watching. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.